Hi, Professor Malburn Wade. This is my presentation for the inclusion of how it feels to be colored me for admission into the Harper single volume of American literature, edited by Donna McQueen. A quick summary of Hurston's life. She grew up in Eatonville, Florida, and she migrated from there and studied at Howard University in 1920, where she earned her associates, and then later went on to attend Barnard University in New York City, where she studied anthropology and was a writer of the Harlem Renaissance and very influential. So, notable parts of her essay: the way she dealt with segregation. She was a colored woman during this time period, and a lot of it had to do with her identity. So, along with that, her courage through prejudices and the unique style of writing she displays during this period. Segregation. Hurston was very courageous and often traveled and lived amongst white people. She did not fear them, and her individuality really was on display, and it's something that people of our time could learn about in Reader's Year anthology. Can take a note of her courageousness. Her ultimate love for the human race, despite institutional hatred which existed. Blacks during this time period often stuck with blacks, and whites, of course, stuck with whites. It was a clear line of segregation, institutionalized from the government. However, because of that, it was a bunch of hatred that went on, and Zora and Hurston stood clear of it for the most part. And her originality did not conform to participate in this hatred. She was her own body, her free soul. She loved the people around her. She loved human beings, white, black, Asian. She did not let that to taint who she was. And I think a lot of people during our time period in 2016, they conform, they form the social norms. And I think maintaining originality, such as Zora Neale Hurston, is what makes this piece notable by getting that message across to the readers. Prejudices. In this piece, she also debunks the power of white privilege. In Barnard College specifically, it was a predominantly white institution, and Zora was one of the few black people that attended that school. As a colored woman, that was even more of a rarity at these institutions. So, by being there, she can discuss what she saw around her, not from a civil rights perspective, but from what she underwent while at these prestigious universities and colleges. She understood and saw past the Jim Crow era, and she did not let these aggressions taint her mindset. In the South, Jim Crow era was going rampant. It was institutionalized, it was aggressions, it was formalized, and it was made into laws that in the South they lived by. And somewhat in the North, however, Harlem safeguarded her from some of these prejudices. However, she did not let that infiltrate that and become part of her life. She stood clear of it. And I believe that how it feels to be colored me could educate society on prejudices that still linger today. Prejudices aren't as in your face as in the Jim Crow era. However, there's still prejudices such as police brutality that exists, targeting of minorities, although it's not formalized in the law, abusive of power by our criminal justice system, and little microaggressions in the job forces, in the workforce, which aren't formalized or aren't excessively called out. However, they still do exist, and I think by including this in your anthology, it can debunk some of these, or it can help debunk some of these prejudices that still exist. Self identity. Hurston, again, as I said, was a free soul. She exemplifies that racism is taught and not innate. Hurston was brought up in Eatonville, where it was an all colored town. However, she did not formalize that hatred for white people, and she had an open mind when it came to dealing with white people. So that goes to show that racism and prejudices is taught, and it's not innate. So many people try to understand why the older generation, some of it is so racist or it's prejudices. It's something that's learned, and I think not by reading this piece and learning how you can make changes to how you perceive other cultures, I think that it could be very influential and very beneficial for your readers. Her self confidence. She was her own person, a free bodied, and she stood alone as a colored woman at Barnard and did not let it affect her. And her resiliency can inspire hope, especially in a woman like her. Women, especially colored women, are in society's bottom of the totem pole, and I think by including this piece in your anthology, people like her can see her hope, see her courage, see her resiliency, and want to be more like her, which could ultimately help them progress their lives. Her writing style. Her creative style is praised by many scholars such as Robert Price Jr. and Alan Locke, who actually was the first African American to be a Rhodes Scholar. So she had a mastery for using a parallel structure, and she often gave history lessons in the sentences she wrote while incorporating the styles and the literature that she was most famous for. So I think since it's very critically acclaimed and lauded for how great of a great of a writer she is, it'll have no problem standing alone or standing with other great writers in your anthology, Mr. McQuaid. The final arguments is Hurston was able to overcome general hatred through love, and I think although generational hatred does not exist to that magnitude in the current day, I think that we all can learn something from the love that she possessed and she gave off during her time period, which is way more segregated and divided than today. Her very original personality, and she didn't conform to social normality. She was her own person. Too many times in educational institutions or in the work environment or in general, people conform to be more like one another in order to just coexist. However, you lose the originality that comes along with that, and I think it's a lost art that Zora Neale Hurston tries to bring to light in this writing. And lastly, she can show society that we can all be a little more like her. Again, all these great characteristics she possessed, her individuality, how she was an introvert but extroverted and loved to be help people. So ultimately, I think it'd be a great addition to your anthology, and her adept writing skills and her loving nature is something that everyone can learn from, and it'll be a great addition to your anthology. So moving away from that, I wanted to go over the close poetry readings. So the first one was A Memo to Non-White People by Langston Hughes. Let me just make this a little larger so you can zoom in. I found this piece especially interesting because it was like Langston Hughes was writing a message or how he felt towards white people and some things that they'll never experience. So it felt as if the theme was that the society was trying to kill off his people or kill off his kind, which is very true and it still transcends into today's era. Like I talked about in the presentation, police brutality, and as such in the ghettos and the inner city housing that is systemized to keep minorities amongst each other and to not grow and expand. However, just repeat the cycle through premature um, births, teenage pregnancies, as such as to just keep the system going and to keep the urban and the minorities amongst each other. So let's dive into it. I highlighted some key points I thought was especially important. The iteration of they. Well, when you speak of they, I believe he's speaking of society or um, the the government, and how he's saying like they will let you have dope because they are quite willing to drug you or kill you. They want to kill off his people. They want to kill off the black African American and the other minorities that are around him. So by doing so, the war on drugs, which never really existed, was a ploy to bring these substances inside the communities to drug you or kill you. They'll let you have babies, the premature births, because they're willing to pauperize you or use your kids as labor boys for Army, Air Force, or year in their mind. They'll let you have alcohol. They want you to just drown your sorrows in alcohol, it is actually has become a method of self-medication, because a lot of these atrocities that happen in these urban areas are so bad, and people are so are so affected and saddened and depressed by that alcohol and smoking and drinking excessively is their way of coping with what's going around them, when these people in fact do have real medical conditions. They'll let you have alcohol, they'll let you sod and drunk and foolish. They will gleefully let you kill your damn self any way you choose, with liquor, drugs, or whatever. They want you to die off. They don't see, Hughes is saying that they don't see value for you, and that they'll just let you do it because it's okay for them to just let the African Americans or the blacks during this time period just kill themselves off because they didn't want them in society to begin with, unless they're enslaved, of course. So he's saying it's the same from Cairo to Chicago, which Africa to Chicago, which South Side is Chicago is a very urban area and um, a very big community populated by African Americans. From Cape Town to the Caribbean, which is famous for during the slave trade. Do you travel the Stork Club circuit to dear old Shepherd's Hotel? Somebody's burnt Shepherd up. I'm sorry, but it is. The same from Cairo to Chicago, Cape Town to the Carib Hilton, exactly the same. He's saying no matter location, the mechanism and the thought process is the same. That they're out to kill the black men, the black women, and they don't care what they do as long as they just keep to themselves and do not try to leave an impact on society. So the next piece is again by Langston Hughes. I think he was my favorite out of the two, out of Langston and Zora and Hurston. But I like them. I like them almost equally as much though. But this one is themed for English B. Um, Langston Hughes was given an assignment to go home and write a page tonight and let the page come out of you, then it'll be true. However, what I believe Langston Hughes is arguing in this piece is that it'll never be true because the professor or the teacher will never understand his life, never understand Harlem, and will never see through the same lens that he does on a daily basis. So he attempts to, and this is his piece, this is his assignment that he writes as a poem. I wonder if it's that simple. I am 22, colored, born in Winston-Salem. I went to school there, then Durham, then here, to this college on the hill above Harlem. I am the only colored student in my class. I bolded that because that immediately off the bat tells you that no one in the class can relate to the experiences he has because he is a black man who overcame a lot of the odds to be in that classroom with them. However, their experiences are completely different and completely unique than his. So, the steps from the hill lead down into Harlem, through a park. Then I cross St. Nicholas, 8th Avenue, 7th, and I come to the Y. From the Harlem Branch Y, where I take the elevator up to my room, sit down, and write this page. He's explaining that he goes home back to Harlem, how he gets there, because a lot of the people probably don't even know how to get to Harlem unless they've been there once or twice to watch a play. His life is different. He doesn't go to Park Avenue, which he famously talks about in his other piece. He goes to Harlem. Harlem was the inner city. Harlem was a very non-affluential area, such as where these other kids in this class probably lived. So just kind of giving them a little insight into them, and I think into where he lives, which is I believe is very important to this piece. It's not easy to know what is true for you or me at 22, my age, but I guess I'm what I feel and seeing here. Harlem, I hear you. He's almost as Harlem's spokesperson for this class, so everything he portrays in this poem is going to be right in a literal sense, and every word's going to be absorbed because he is their only visual of Harlem, which he's trying to paint in this poem. Hear you, hear me, we two, you, me, talk on this page. He's speaking to Harlem right now, and he's interacting with it, and it's just great how he can incorporate that in a poem. The iteration, hear you, hear me, we two. It's almost as we two as in one, like he embodies Harlem and wears it on him during this poem. I hear New York too. Me? Who? So he's saying he sees Harlem, however, he sees New York as a whole because he has been able to experience both sides of it to the best of his ability. While I like to eat, sleep, drink, and be in love, he's describing that he likes to be normal. I like to work, read, learn, and understand life. I like a pipe for a Christmas present, or records, Bessie Bop or Bach. I guess being colored doesn't make me not like the same things other folks like who are other races, saying he's a human being at the end of the day and that we do have some of the same interests. So will my page be colored that I write? Will it be colored? I think that deserves to be bolded as well. I'm sorry. So will my page be colored that I write? It's saying your paper's white. You're white and you're writing on a white paper. However, he's colored. Does that mean his paper should be black because he's colored? No, it's white paper and it's the same regardless of your race. Being me, it will not be white. But it will be. A part of you, instructor. You are white, yet a part of me as I am part of you. Saying again that he is a human being and part of him will be part of you because will be part of the professor because they both are human beings and Americans. Sometimes perhaps you don't want to be a part of me. Of course, the professor doesn't want to be part of him because he doesn't want to go through the prejudices, the racism, the segregation, which Langston Hughes and people like him have went through. Nor do I often want to be part of you. And this just goes with the antipathy and the loathing that they have for a lot of the black community has for white people, especially during this time period. But we are, that's true. As I learned from you, I guess you learned from me. He's trying his best to to teach what it means to be black and live in Harlem and explain his life through these couple of lines. Although you're older and white and somewhat more free. Older and white, I think, is a test to the professor's privilege and more free. I think that he's downplaying the significance of more free. He is more free. The professor isn't more free. He is free. It's almost as more is just an adjective that isn't necessary, or it's a word play to to have a play on words, which is something Langston Hughes was very good at. And then at the end, this is my page for English B, in which he's just concluding and explaining to those confused what he did. That this is the exact assignment. So, thank you. And overall, this is the two poems I chose. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and the poetry close readings. Thank you for having me.